Maya was just a regular middle school girl who loved going to school. She enjoyed learning, spending time with her friends, and making her parents proud. That morning, she had dressed in a long hoodie and a pair of comfortable black leggings. It wasn't anything unusual, just her normal school outfit. She had worn similar clothes before without any problems. But today was different. As she sat in class, listening to her teacher explain the lesson, she suddenly heard her name. "Maya, come here for a moment," Mrs. Calloway said. Maya felt a little nervous as she stood up. She hadn't done anything wrong, so she wasn't sure why the teacher wanted to speak with her. When she walked up to the teacher's desk, Mrs. Calloway gave her a serious look. "Your outfit is against the dress code," she said firmly. "Leggings are not allowed unless you wear a long shirt or a skirt over them." Maya was confused. "But I'm wearing a long hoodie," she said, looking down at herself. It covered her well, reaching down past her hips. Mrs. Calloway shook her head. "It's not long enough. You need to call home and have someone bring you a change of clothes." Maya didn't know what to say. She had never been in trouble for her clothes before. She had seen other girls wear leggings, and no one had told them to change. She felt embarrassed as some of her classmates turned to look at her. She was taken to the school office, where she was handed a phone to call her mother. But after a few rings, the call went to voicemail. Her mom was at work, and probably couldn't answer. Mrs. Calloway sighed. "If no one can bring you new clothes, you'll have to go home." Maya felt her stomach drop. "But I don't have any other clothes with me," she said softly. Mrs. Calloway handed her a hall pass. "You can wear your hoodie and go home," she said as if it was no big deal. Maya stared at her in shock. She had come to school fully dressed, but now she was being sent home without proper clothing. She felt a lump in her throat as she realized she had no choice. With her head down, she walked out of the school, clutching her backpack tightly. As she stepped outside, she felt the cold air against her legs. She pulled her hoodie down as much as she could, but it didn't help much. She wrapped her arms around herself and walked as fast as she could toward home, hoping no one would see her like this. By the time she reached her front door, her eyes were filled with tears. She felt humiliated and confused. Why had this happened to her? Why had no one helped her? As she stepped inside, her mother turned to look at her. And the moment she saw Maya, everything changed. Lisa was busy in the kitchen when she heard the front door open. She expected Maya to be at school, so she turned quickly, wondering why her daughter was home so early. But the moment she saw her, she froze. Maya stood there, her face red, her eyes filled with tears, and worst of all, she was only wearing her hoodie. Lisa's heart dropped. She rushed toward her daughter, her voice filled with concern. "Maya, what happened? Why are you home? And where are your pants?" Maya sniffled, trying to hold back her tears. "Mrs. Calloway said my leggings were against the dress code," she said in a small voice. "She told me to call you, but you didn't answer. So she made me leave, like this." Lisa's eyes widened in shock. "She sent you home like this, without pants?" Maya nodded slowly. "I told her I didn't have anything else to wear, but she just gave me a pass and told me to go home." Lisa felt anger rise inside her, but she took a deep breath, trying to stay calm for her daughter. She couldn't believe this. Her daughter had gone to school fully dressed, and now she had walked home feeling embarrassed and ashamed. She gently pulled Maya into a hug. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. This should have never happened." Maya held on to her mother tightly. "Everyone was looking at me. I felt so embarrassed," she whispered. Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, trying to control the frustration she felt. This wasn't just about a dress code. It was about how her daughter had been treated. Would this have happened to someone else? Lisa had a strong feeling that other students had worn similar outfits without being sent home like this. She pulled back and looked into Maya's eyes. "We're not going to let this go, okay? Your dad needs to hear about this." Maya wiped her eyes and gave a small nod. She knew her dad was someone people listened to. If anyone could do something about this, it was him. Lisa picked up her phone and quickly dialed David's number. It rang only once before he answered. "Hey, everything okay?" he asked. "No, everything is not okay," Lisa said, her voice shaking with anger. Maya just walked home from school wearing only her hoodie because a teacher said her leggings broke the dress code. There was a short silence on the other end of the line. Then, David's voice became firm. "She sent her home like that. Alone." "Yes," Lisa said, "and Maya is upset. She feels humiliated." David let out a slow breath. "I'll be home soon." Lisa hung up and turned back to Maya. "Your dad is going to fix this," she said. Maya felt a little better knowing her parents were on her side. But deep inside, she still felt hurt. She had gone to school happy that morning, and now everything had changed. David walked into the house faster than usual, his face serious. He had been in the middle of work when Lisa called him, but the moment he heard what happened to Maya, he knew he had to leave right away. Nothing was more important than his daughter. As soon as he saw Maya sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, his heart ached. He could see the sadness in her eyes. His little girl, who was always full of energy, looked hurt and confused. He sat down beside her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Hey, sweetheart, tell me everything that happened." Maya took a deep breath and told her dad everything, from how Mrs. Calloway called her out in class to how she was forced to walk home with no proper clothing. She tried to stay strong, but as she spoke, her voice wavered. "I felt so embarrassed, Daddy. I didn't do anything wrong." David's jaw tightened as he listened. He knew dress codes existed, but the way this situation was handled was completely unacceptable. He wasn't just angry because it was his daughter. He was angry because no child should be treated this way. Lisa crossed her arms, still furious. What kind of teacher does this? She could have given Maya something else to wear or called the office for help. But instead, she sent her home like this, like she didn't care how Maya felt. David nodded. This isn't just about a dress code. It's about how unfairly Maya was treated. I've seen this happen before. Certain students being punished more than others for the same thing. He looked at Maya and gave her a reassuring smile. "I promise you, we're going to do something about this." Maya felt a little comforted by his words, but a part of her still worried. What if they say it's just the rules? What if they don't care? David looked her in the eyes. "Then we make them care." He grabbed his laptop and started looking up the school's dress code policy. As he expected, there was nothing in the rules that explained why Maya's outfit should have been a problem. More importantly, he found past complaints from other parents about the same unfair treatment, though none had taken action. "This isn't just about today," David said, turning the screen toward Lisa. "This has been happening to other students too. We need to bring this to the school's attention." Lisa agreed, "And we're not letting this go." David picked up his phone and called the school. When the receptionist answered, he kept his voice calm but firm. "This is David Williams. I need to set up a meeting with the principal about an incident involving my daughter, Maya." The receptionist hesitated before answering. I can check his schedule." "No," David interrupted. "This meeting needs to happen as soon as possible. We need to talk." Maya watched as her father handled the situation, feeling a new sense of hope. Maybe things were about to change. The next morning, David and Lisa walked into Maya's school, their expressions serious. Maya had stayed home for the day. Lisa didn't want her to go back until they got some answers. As they entered the main office, the receptionist gave them a nervous look. She had probably already heard about the situation. "The principal will see you now," she said, quickly leading them to his office. Principal Holloway sat behind his desk, his hands folded. He gave a polite but cautious smile as he gestured for them to sit. "Mr. and Mrs. Williams, I understand you have concerns about what happened with Maya." David wasted no time. "That's right. My daughter was humiliated and sent home without proper clothing. That is unacceptable. We want to know why this happened and why the school thought this was an appropriate way to handle the situation. Principal Holloway nodded slowly. I understand your frustration. The school has a dress code, and Mrs. Calloway was simply enforcing it. Lisa frowned, then explained to me why my daughter was singled out. She's worn similar outfits before without a problem. And I know for a fact that other girls wear leggings all the time. Why was Maya treated differently? The principal shifted in his chair. Well, I can't speak for every situation, but our teachers do their best to follow the rules. David leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. I looked up your dress code. Nowhere does it say that leggings are against the rules if a long shirt is worn. Maya's hoodie covered her completely. So I ask again, why was she targeted? The principal hesitated, then let out a breath. I'll admit, Mrs. Calloway may have handled the situation poorly. Lisa crossed her arms. Poorly. She sent our daughter out of this school without proper clothing. That's not poorly. That's irresponsible. What if something had happened to her on the way home? David nodded. And let's talk about the bigger issue. I did some research. This isn't the first time students have been unfairly punished under this dress code. And from what I found, it seems to happen more often to certain students. The principal's face stiffened. Are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting, David interrupted. I'm stating a fact. The rules are not being applied equally, and I have spoken to other parents who feel the same way. Principal Holloway rubbed his forehead. Look, I don't want any student to feel mistreated. If mistakes were made, we will address them. Lisa wasn't satisfied. That's not enough. We want a real solution. We want a review of the dress code and the way it's enforced. And we want an apology for Maya. The principal sighed. I'll need to discuss this with the school board. David stood up. Then do it quickly. Because if we don't see real changes, we'll take this matter further. As they walked out of the office, Lisa glanced at David. Do you think they'll actually do something? David's eyes were sharp with determination. If they don't, we will. That evening, Maya sat on the couch, hugging her knees. She had been thinking about what happened all day. Even though her parents were standing up for her, she still felt hurt. Would her classmates think she did something wrong? Would the school even care about what happened to her? Lisa sat down beside her and gently brushed a hand over her daughter's hair. How are you feeling, sweetheart? She asked softly. Maya shrugged. I don't know. I just don't get why this happened to me. David, who had just finished a phone call, walked over and sat down on the other side of Maya. You did nothing wrong, he assured her. This isn't your fault. And I promise you, people are going to listen. Maya looked up. Did the principal say anything? David nodded. He said he'll talk to the school board. But we're not just waiting around for them to decide what's right and wrong. We're going to make sure your story is heard. Lisa held up her phone. I shared what happened on social media today. And Maya, a lot of people are talking about it. Maya blinked in surprise. Really? Lisa showed her the post. Hundreds of comments were pouring in. Parents, students, and even teachers sharing their own experiences. Many of them were outraged, saying that what happened to Maya wasn't fair. Some even shared similar stories of students being singled out for dress code violations while others were ignored. I also talked to a few other parents. David added. Some of them had their daughters pulled out of class for dress code violations that didn't even break the rules. This isn't just about you, Maya. It's a bigger problem. Maya scrolled through the messages, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of her was still upset, but another part of her felt stronger. People cared. People believed her. So, what happens now? She asked. Lisa smiled. Now we keep pushing. Your dad is going to speak with the school board. And if they don't take this seriously, we'll make sure more people know about it. David nodded. I'm also reaching out to some local news stations. They might want to cover this story. Maya's eyes widened. Wait, on TV? David chuckled. Maybe, but don't worry. We won't do anything you're not comfortable with. Maya thought about it. A part of her still wished this had never happened. But another part of her, the part that was tired of feeling small and powerless, wanted to make sure no one else went through the same thing. She took a deep breath and sat up straighter. "I don't want this to happen to anyone else," she said firmly. Lisa squeezed her hand. "And it won't, because we're going to make sure of it." For the first time since that awful day at school, Maya felt hopeful. Maybe this wasn't just about what happened to her. Maybe this was about changing things for good. The next morning, David sat at the kitchen table, his laptop open in front of him. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from other parents and even some reporters who had seen Lisa's social media post. The story was spreading fast, and people were paying attention. Maya sat beside him, eating her breakfast quietly. She still felt nervous about all the attention, but she also felt something new: pride. People cared about what happened to her. Her parents were making sure her voice was heard. And that meant something. Lisa walked into the kitchen, holding her phone. "I just got a message from another mom," she said. Her daughter was sent home last month for wearing jeans with a tiny hole in the knee. She told me she felt like the school only enforced the dress code for certain students. David sighed. "That's exactly what I've been hearing too. This isn't just about Maya. It's about how unfairly these rules are applied." He closed his laptop and looked at Maya. "Are you sure you're okay with me speaking to the school board today?" Maya nodded. "Yes, I want them to know how they made me feel." David smiled. "That's my brave girl." A few hours later, David arrived at the school board meeting. The room was filled with teachers, parents, and even some students who had come to listen. Principal Holloway was there too, sitting beside Mrs. Calloway, who looked uncomfortable. When it was David's turn to speak, he walked to the front of the room, his voice strong and clear. "My name is David Williams. I'm here today because my daughter, Maya, was unfairly punished under the school's dress code. Not only was she embarrassed in front of her classmates, but she was also sent home without proper clothing, forced to walk home in a way that made her feel ashamed." The room was silent as he continued. "I've spoken to other parents, and this isn't an isolated case. Dress codes should be about maintaining a respectful environment, not about making students, especially young girls, feel uncomfortable and targeted. The rules need to be applied fairly to everyone, and most importantly, no child should ever be sent home without proper clothing." He turned to Principal Holloway. "I want to know what steps this school is willing to take to make sure this never happens again." The principal cleared his throat. "We take these concerns seriously, Mr. Williams. We are reviewing our policies and will make sure all staff receive proper training to handle dress code situations with more sensitivity." David wasn't satisfied yet. "And what about Maya? She deserves an apology." The principal glanced at Mrs. Calloway, who hesitated before finally speaking. I didn't mean to make Maya feel bad. If she felt embarrassed, I apologize. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start." David nodded, knowing this was only the beginning. Change was coming, and Maya's voice had helped make it happen. That evening, David returned home feeling both satisfied and determined. He had made his point at the school board meeting, and while the principal and Mrs. Calloway had apologized, he knew words alone weren't enough. Actions mattered more. Maya was sitting on the couch, waiting for him. "So, how did it go?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and nervousness. David smiled as he sat down beside her. "They listened. They promised to review the dress code and make sure it's enforced fairly. And Mrs. Calloway apologized, though I think she only did it because she had to." Maya sighed. "It still doesn't feel fair. She acted like she didn't even care about what she did." Lisa sat down on Maya's other side. "I know, sweetheart, but the important thing is, people are paying attention now. That means things can change." David nodded. "Speaking of that, a reporter called me today. They want to do a story on this." Maya's eyes widened. "Wait, really? Like on the news?" "Yes," David said. "They want to interview you too. but only if you're comfortable with it. Maya hesitated. The thought of being on TV made her nervous. But at the same time, she remembered how embarrassed she had felt walking home that day. If speaking up could help other kids avoid going through the same thing, maybe it was worth it. She took a deep breath. Okay, I'll do it. Lisa squeezed her hand. We're so proud of you, Maya. The next day, the news crew arrived at their house. Maya sat in the living room with David and Lisa beside her. The reporter smiled warmly. Maya, can you tell us what happened that day? Maya took another deep breath and told her story. She explained how she was pulled out of class, how Mrs. Calloway told her to leave, and how she had to walk home in embarrassment. She spoke about how unfair it felt and how other students had faced similar treatment. When she finished, the reporter nodded. That sounds very difficult, Maya. What do you hope comes from this? Maya thought for a moment, then said, I just want things to be fair. I don't want any other kid to feel like I did that day. David added, this isn't about one teacher or one school. It's about making sure all students are treated with respect, and we won't stop speaking up until that happens. The interview ended, and the reporter thanked them for sharing their story. As they packed up their equipment, Maya felt a mix of emotions. She was still nervous about how people would react, but she also felt proud. Lisa hugged her. You were amazing, sweetheart. David smiled. And now, the whole town is going to hear your voice. Maya felt something new, a sense of strength. She had spoken up, and people were listening. Maybe, just maybe, things were really going to change. The next morning, Maya woke up feeling different. She wasn't just another student at her school anymore. She was someone people were listening to. As she got ready, she checked her phone and saw messages from friends, classmates, and even people she didn't know. Some were telling her how brave she was, while others shared their own stories of unfair treatment at school. When she and her parents sat down for breakfast, David had the news playing on the TV. Maya's interview was being broadcast across town. Seeing herself on the screen felt strange, but also exciting. Lisa smiled. People are really paying attention now. David nodded. And the school board knows it. I got a call this morning. They want to hold a meeting with parents and students to discuss changes to the dress code. Maya's eyes widened. Really? That fast? David chuckled. When a story gets this much attention, people start moving quickly. Later that day, Maya decided to go back to school. She was nervous about how her classmates would react, but as soon as she walked through the doors, she realized she had nothing to worry about. A few students came up to her right away. Maya, that was awesome, one girl said. You spoke up for all of us. Yeah, another added. I got in trouble for my jeans last week, and now they're finally listening to us. Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time since everything had happened, she didn't feel embarrassed. She felt strong. Even some teachers treated her differently. A few gave her supportive smiles, and others avoided eye contact, unsure of what to say. But Maya didn't care. She had done the right thing. At the end of the day, an announcement came over the speakers. Attention students and staff. A meeting will be held this Friday to review the school dress code. Parents and students are encouraged to attend and share their thoughts. Maya couldn't believe it. She had spoken up, and now real change was happening. When she got home, she ran to her parents and hugged them. We did it, she said, smiling. Lisa hugged her back. No, sweetheart, you did it. David nodded. You turned something unfair into something powerful. And because of you, no other kid will have to go through what you did. That Friday, the school gym was packed with parents, students, and teachers. The school board listened as people shared their concerns about the dress code. Policies were questioned, new ideas were suggested, and by the end of the night, the board promised real changes. Maya sat between her parents, watching it all unfold. She had started as just one voice, but now she was part of something bigger. As they left the meeting, David put an arm around Maya's shoulders. "You should be proud of yourself," he said. Maya smiled. "I am." And for the first time since that awful day, she truly felt it.